myself Srija. Today you are going to learn about the anatomy and physiology of respiratory system. You will be able to know about how it functions and what role the system plays in human body. Okay? And this is the introduction to respiratory system. The respiratory system is one of the most important systems in our body because it helps us to breathe and exchange the gases that are vital for life. And this is the respiratory system picture. Here you can clearly see all the organs of the respiratory system. So what is the main function of the respiratory system? It brings oxygen into the body and it removes the carbon dioxide, which is a waste product made by our cells during the metabolism. So why it's important? Oxygen is needed by every cell in our body to produce the energy. So without oxygen, cells cannot function properly, right? So carbon dioxide on the other hand must be removed because too much of it can make our blood acidic and harmful. So what are the main organs involved in the respiratory system? Nose and nasal cavity, pharynx and larynx, trachea, bronchi and bronchioles, lungs, and how it works together. All these parts work together to ensure a continuous supply of oxygen to the blood and efficient removal of carbon dioxide. So this balance helps to keep our body's internal environment so stable, so which process is called as homeostasis. So what do you mean by homeostasis? It's a maintaining our body's internal environment stable. So balancing our body's internal environment is nothing but homeostasis. So proper functioning of the respiratory system is essential for life and energy production and the overall health. So how do you define a respiratory system? It's a network, like it's a group of organs and tissues that help us to breathe. It includes the airways. So what airways? It includes like nose, trachea, bronchi, lungs, and the blood vessels that carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. So even the muscles that help your lungs move, such as the diaphragm, these are all part of this respiratory system. So all these parts work together to bring in oxygen in which the body needs for energy, and also it removes the carbon dioxide. It's a waste gas made by our cells. So the respiratory system keeps your blood full of oxygen and clean from the waste gases. So what is the function? So what does the respiratory system do? It helps you to breathe in and out. The first one is it helps you to breathe in and out. So what we all do, we inhale oxygen, right? So we inhale oxygen and we exhale the carbon dioxide. So what do you mean by inhaling oxygen? When you breathe in, so when you breathe in, we take oxygen into our body. So when we breathe out, we we eliminate the carbon dioxide outside to the body. So this constant exchange, it keeps your body functioning properly. And what does the respiratory system also do? It allows you to talk and smell. So air passing through your larynx, it helps you to produce sounds for speech. The air you breathe also, it carries odors to the nose, allowing you to the smell. So it also warms the respiratory system. It also warms, moistens, and cleans the air. How it warms and moistens and cleans the air? Before the air reaches your lungs, it is warm to your body's temperature and also the moisten for the comfort. So the tiny hairs and mucus in your nose and airways, they trap the dust and germs, protecting you from the irritants. So it always protects you from the germs and dust. It also delivers the oxygen to the cells. It also removes the waste gases from the body. And this respiratory system, it protects the airways, like it defends against the harmful substances such as the smoke, dust, and microbes that could damage your lungs. So let's talk about the parts of the respiratory system. So what are the parts of the respiratory system? There are different parts of the respiratory system. First of all, this human respiratory system, it is divided into two tracts. What are they? Upper respiratory tract. Here you can clearly see in the picture. Upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. So what is upper respiratory tract? What organs are involved over here? Nasal cavity, pharynx and larynx. Whereas in lower trachea, primary bronchi, and lungs. Yeah, this upper respiratory system, it consists of the organs that located outside the chest cavity. I already said you. What are they? Nasal cavity means nose, pharynx, larynx. So these are located outside the chest cavity. They serve mainly to filter, warm, and moisten the incoming air. So the what we breathe in the air before it reaching the lungs. So these three organs, the organs in the upper respiratory tract, they filter, warm, and moisten the air we breathe in. So these structures also help in smelling, sound production, and also the protection from dust, microbes, and other harmful particles. So what are the functions of this upper respiratory tract? It acts as the first line of defense by trapping the dust and pathogens. So I already said it protects us from the dust, microbes, and other harmful particles, right? So it also warms and humidifies the air entering the lungs before reaching the lungs. So when we take the air inside to the mouth before reaching the lungs, so this parts, this nasal cavity, pharynx, and larynx, they warm and humidifies the air. This they also provides the resonance for speech and sound. So it facilitates the sense of smell. This nasal cavity, it helps in facilitating the sense of smell. So coming to the lower respiratory tract, this includes the organs within the chest cavity. Upper respiratory tract, these are outside the chest cavity, right? Whereas lower respiratory tract, these are inside the chest cavity. So these are directly involved in the air production and the gas exchange. So it consists of trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, lungs, and along with the diaphragm. So the main muscle, what is the diaphragm? It's a main muscle over the, which is responsible for the breathing. So what are the functions of the lower respiratory tract? They conduct air deep into the lungs. They also enable the gaseous exchange between the air and the bloodstream. What bloodstream? Oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide outside to the body, right? So it also helps maintain acid-base balance in the body. So within the body, acid-base balance must be needed to protect all the tissues and cells. So it also supports speech and protects against harmful particles through the ciliary movement and also the mucus. In simple words, the upper respiratory tract prepares and protects the airway, where the lower respiratory tract, it performs the actual gases exchange so that our body keeps alive. So together they function as a unified system that powers every breath we take. So which is the essence of the life itself. Yeah. Now coming to the first part of the upper respiratory tract. What it is? Nose and nasal cavity. Right? So what is nose and nasal cavity? It forms the first part of the respiratory system. So this means it is the main entry point, right? It is the main entry point where we breathe in the oxygen into the body. So here you can see the anatomy of the nose. This is the base view, this is the frontal view. You can see the nasal septum, you can see the lateral cartilages, you can see the columella, and also incision for open rhinoplasty. So what are the main functions of the nose and nasal cavity? Filtering, warming, humidifying, sensing the air we breathe. So what do you mean by filtering? Filtering the air. So when we breathe in, there are tiny hairs called cilia and sticky mucus inside the nose, trap dust, germs, and other harmful particles. So this helps. So by the function of filtering, so this filtering, it helps clean the air before it goes deeper into the lungs. So coming to the warming, what do you mean by warming? The air we breathe can be cold. So the blood vessels in the nasal cavity, they warm the air so that it matches the body's temperature, protecting the lungs from the cold air. Coming to the next function, humidifying. So humidifying, the nose adds moisture to the air so that this prevents the inner parts of the respiratory tract from drying out. So humidifying is nothing but making the moisture, right? So that the inner parts couldn't be dry. This is a daily most example. As we apply moisturizer to our body, if we do not apply the moisturizer to the body, our skin gets dry, right? In the same way, the nose also adds the moisture to the air so that the inner parts couldn't get dry, right? So the last function is sensing. So the olfactory receptors are present in the nose, which are located in the upper part of the nasal cavity, helps to detect the different smells. So this is an important part of how we experience the taste in our environment. So what are the parts of the nose over here? External nose and internal nose. Yeah, and here is a picture, and this in the next slide we have the discussion, I mean description. So the external nose, it's a visible part, right? Yeah. So the external nose, it's a visible part. And what is the structure of the external nose? You can see over here the external structure of the nose, which is made up of bone and cartilage. So external nose, it's made up of bone and cartilage. The upper part of the nose is made up of, this is the upper part, right? So the upper part is made up of bone, while the lower part is made up of cartilage. Clearly you can see in the picture, upper part bone and lower part cartilage, and both are covered by the skin. So this combination gives the nose its shape, support and flexibility. So what are the bones of the nose? Nasal bone, frontal bone and maxilla. So this nasal bone, it forms the bridge, the middle line, right? It's the bridge of the nose. So the nasal bone, it forms the bridge of the nose. The frontal bone, it forms the forehead area, whereas the maxilla, the upper jaw, it forms the upper jaw, which helps the sides of the nose. So these bones make the nose strong and also the stable. And coming to the cartilaginous part of the nose, this cartilage makes up of the lower softer portion of the nose. You can clearly see over here lower lateral cartilage. So this cartilage makes up the lower softer portion of the nose. So what does it do? It gives the nose its shape and it also allows it to be flexible, which helps to protect it from the injury. You can also see over here the part, I mean this is a nasal septum, right? The either sides of the nasal septum, you can see the nostrils. So what are nostrils? There are two nostrils, which are the external openings of the nose. So they lead directly into the nasal cavity, where the air is filtered, warm and moistened. So the external nose, it's like the front gate of a respiratory system. It's made up of bones for strength and also the cartilage for flexibility. Whereas the nostrils, they act as the entry doors that let air into the body. And then going to nasal cavity. So what is nasal cavity? It's an internal part of the nose which lies behind the external nose, and also it extends from nostrils to the nasopharynx. So this is a hollow space. This nasal cavity, it's a hollow space that plays an important role in filtering, warming and humidifying the air we breathe in. So you can see over here in the picture the structure of the nasal cavity. So it is divided into two halves on the either sides, the right half and the left half. So it is divided into two halves by a wall called nasal septum. So the nasal septum is made up of bone and cartilage. The bony part, it includes the vomer and the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. So this cartilage makes the septum flexible. So what is the root and roof floor of the nasal cavity? The roof is nothing but the upper part of the nasal cavity, which is formed by the ethmoid bone. So the floor, the bottom part, it is formed by the ethmoid bone. The upper part, I mean the roof of the nasal cavity, it's formed by the ethmoid bone, whereas the bottom part, it is formed by the palatine process of maxilla and also the palatine bone. So together, these bones protect and shape the nasal cavity. When coming to the lateral walls, you can see here the nasal concha, nasal concave. What are the lateral walls? These are the sides of the nasal cavity. They are present on the sides of the nasal cavity, right? So they can contain three curved bones called as nasal concave or also the turbinates. What are they? Superior concave, middle concave and inferior concave. So these structures, they increase the surface area inside the nose. Okay. The structures, it makes the area to be along or prolonged inside the nose. So what does this do? This helps in filtering, warming, and also moisturizing the air as it passes through. So the next part, it's a nasal meatus. So what is nasal meatus? Under each concave, this is the concave, right? So this is a nasal concave. Under each concave, you can see a nasal meatus, which is a passage. So what this meatus acts as? So this acts as drainage areas for the paranasal sinuses and also the nasolacrimal duct. So what do you mean by paranasal sinuses? Is nothing but sinuses is nothing but it's a air filled spaces around the nose. So it also acts as the nasolacrimal duct. Lacrimal is nothing but tears, which drains the tears from the eyes into nose. That's why your nose runs when you cry, right? We all know the thing. When we cry, our nose runs. So this is the reason, because the meatus acts as the drainage areas for the nasolacrimal duct. So the nasal cavity is all like a high-tech air filter inside your head. It cleans, it warms, and also it moisturizes the air before it goes down to the lungs. And also even it connects to the sinuses and tear ducts. So this is the nasal cavity structure. What I said you, the upper part of the nasal cavity, it is made up of the vomer bone, I mean the ethmoid bone, whereas the lower part of the nasal cavity, it is made up of which bone? The palatine process of the maxilla and the palatine bone. The upper part by ethmoid bone, the lower part the palatine bone. So next, coming to the functions of the nose and nasal cavity. So what are the functions of nose and nasal cavity? The nose and nasal cavity do much more than just help us to breathe, right? So they perform several important respiratory and protective functions that keep the air clean, warm, and suitable for our lungs. So let's look each function one by one. So what do you here? You have 6 functions, right? So let's look at each function one by one. The first one is air passageway. So what is air passageway? The nose acts as a main entry and exit point for air during the breathing, right? So when we inhale air, it enters through the nostrils. After nostrils, it passes through the nasal cavity and then it moves down to the lungs. So when we exhale, the air passes out into the same way. So that's the reason nose serves as the first part of the respiratory pathway. So this is the function by the nasal cavity. What it is? The air passageway. Now what is the next function of the nasal cavity? Filtration of air. So filtration of air, where does the air get filtered? Inside the nose. Okay, so inside the nose we all have a tiny hairs called as cilia and also the mucus. So they trap dust, dirt, and also the microorganisms. So this prevents the harmful particles from entering the lungs. It also acts like a natural air filter. So this is how the air gets filtered within the nose. And coming to warming and humidifying air. Here, the blood vessels in the nasal lining warm the incoming air to the body temperature. The mucous membrane, they adds moisturizer to it. So the mucous membrane, they adds moisture to the it. So that our air gets warm and the inside parts which are present in the nose, they do not get dry. So what does this do? The mucous membrane, it adds moisture to it, making it humid. So this protects the delicate tissues in the lungs from dry or cold air. So what is the next function? Olfaction. Olfaction is nothing but the sense of smell. Olfacto means the sense of smell. So we all have the olfactory receptors in the upper part of the nasal cavity, right? So what does this upper olfactory receptors do? They detect the different smells. So these signals, they are sent to the brain. So after that, what happens in the brain? It helps us identifying the odors and also even we enhance our sense of taste. So enhancing the sense of taste, enhancing the sense of smell, falls under the olfaction function. So what is the next function? Resonance of the speech. So what is resonance of speech? The nasal cavity, it also play a role in speech production. It acts as a resonant chamber. So what do you mean by a resonance chamber? So giving tone and quality to our voice. So this is all the nasal cavity function. What does it do? So giving a tone and quality to our voice, it's a main function of the nasal cavity. So that's why our voice sounds different when your nose is blocked. So our voice is normal, is regular on the normal days, but when we experience the cold or fever, immediately your nose gets blocked, right? Yeah. So that's acts as a resonant chamber. So coming to the last function, defense mechanism. So in defense mechanism, this nasal cavity, it contains the immune cells and mucus that trap and destroy the pathogens like bacteria and viruses. So sneezing is also a defense action. So when do we sneeze? When we experience a cold. So how do we experience a cold? Why? When our immune cells or the when immune cells fails to trap the pathogens that enter into the body, right? So whenever pathogens enter into the body, our immune cells fail to trap and destroy them, then we get the we experience the cold and then we sneeze. So nothing but sneezing is also a defense action. It expels the irritants or foreign particles. So this helps protect the entire respiratory tract from the infection. So the nose isn't just for breathing and smelling. It's also like a security guard for your lungs, which protect the lungs from entering the air. So it cleans, warms, and also moistens and protects the air before sending it deeper into the body. So that's it, guys. That's it for today's session. In the next session, you will be learning about the upper respiratory tract and its functions, right? Okay, thank you.